Hi everyone. So in episode 4, we are going to be simulating particles along a given path. So you can see here I've set up my scene with 3 vectors. So the vector will essentially be the direction you want your particles to move in. And I've applied a noise modifier to this. So what that'll do is essentially wiggle the line as the particles move across it, just to kind of create a bit more of a turbulent flow. And those are the settings I've applied to that noise. I've then gone ahead and copied this along 3 times just to kind of express the particles a bit more. So we'll be using TyFlow, of course, for this simulation. I've already got one made earlier, so I'll just show you it here in my TyFlow dialog. So what I've done is obviously create 3 event ones, obviously corresponding to each of the 3 vectors that I've made. They're all exactly the same, so I'll just explain one of them. So of course we start off with our birth object, and the particle birth will be determined based off your frames that you have in your scene. So if you've got 300 frames, I'd like the particles to be pretty much generated from start to finish. And then I've applied some custom properties to this, like a scale magnitude. And what this will do is essentially increase the scale of the particles as they go along the curve. So the position is, of course, where you will start your particles from. So I've created these tie icons that I've selected for each one. And you can see there it's essentially just a rectangle, pretty much like a plane, that will pretty much create a flow in a certain direction based off that arrow that's on the plane. Our path to follow is, of course, the lines that we've created. We've then gone and put a slow speed on this. This is just to kind of slow the particles along that vector. The force will be a turbulent flow. So this is to kind of simulate turbulent particles along this flow, just to kind of have more of that kind of wind feel. So ultimately we want to create an array of particles that will interact with the buildings as they pass through. And you can see there the settings I've used for it. So particle bind is placed just to kind of create binds with each particle as they hit each other. So essentially to show where there are moments of build up in the building and where there are moments where there's easier flow to come through. And also what will happen is they will scale based on a distance to each other. And they will also, here you can create spawns. So what it'll do is it'll create another particle once a particle is further distant from another. So you will know that as a particle will hit the object and another particle will pass, you will spawn more particles. So you will know whether or not your building is running efficiently based off how many particles are spawning at these intersection points. So your step size will adjust that. So you can see there on the top left. And you can see there the particles were created a little bit more denser because we increased the spawn percentage. All right, so our flow is looking good there. You can see slowly how it comes across. And you want kind of a mixture of small and large to kind of have that organic feel. And then, of course, you want to display the geometry of it. So then when we go into the shape, this is the shape of the actual particle itself. In my instance, I've just used a 2D plane just to kind of put a little bit less strain on my computer, just so I could render it a bit easier. But you, of course, can put anything here. So if I change that to a circle, you can see the particles change to a circle. Of course, this can also be a three-dimensional object, but that will definitely slow down my computer a lot more. Okay, so once we're happy with that, we then want to apply a scale proximity to it. So what this does is essentially scale an object as it moves further apart from itself or as it collides with another object. So in this case, the proximity is as a particle gets closer and hits with our buildings, those particles will then scale by a factor given in the settings. So what we do there is, so I'll remove the older objects that I had there and I'll just import my new objects. So I'll just delete that last one and click. So object 73 is of course my topography. And then I'll go ahead and select the buildings that I would like my particles to scale when they hit. So once I have my building selected, I'll just click add selected, give it a bit of time, and then there are your particles, there are your objects. So of course, then you're going to want to include your collision modifier as well to make sure that those particles actually collide with these buildings. So again, we're going to do the same process of just removing the old that I had there and pretty much going again, add selected, and that'll add the selected buildings to our collision. And then of course, I've got those same settings in each of my other events. And as I run it across the slider, if my computer doesn't crash, you will be able to see the particles flow past the building. If it doesn't work, I will just show you the final rendered view in part 2 as we edit in Adobe Premiere. And it looks like that's what we'll have to do.